The moment they laughed at the cleaning man in the boardroom, Ryan Fletcher had no idea his job was already slipping away. The boardroom on the 42nd floor of Sterling Dynamics had floor-to-ceiling windows facing north over Midtown Atlanta, and on a clear Tuesday morning in March, the light came through at an angle that turned the glass conference table into a mirror. You could see everything in that surface: the skyline, the leather chairs, the half-eaten pastries going stiff on a silver tray. And if you were standing at the far end, pushing a microfiber cloth in slow, careful circles, you could see your own shape moving through the room like something the room hadn't decided to acknowledge. Darius Langston had been in that room for 11 minutes. Nobody had looked at him once. That was normal. After 7 months working as a contracted cleaning technician at Sterling Dynamics, he understood the mechanics of invisibility. You wore the uniform, navy blue, no name badge, just a laminated clip with a number, and you became part of the room's infrastructure, like the air vents or the potted ficus by the window. People talked around you, over you, through you. They said things in front of you they would never say in front of a person. That was precisely why he was there. The meeting had started at 8 sharp. Ryan Fletcher, Sterling Dynamics CEO for the past 18 months, stood at the head of the table with the ease of a man who had never once doubted his right to take up space. He was 33, lean and expensively assembled, charcoal suit, $200 haircut worn with practiced carelessness, cufflinks catching the light every time he advanced his slide deck. He had a way of pausing before key phrases that trained the room to hold its breath, and the 6 board members arranged along both sides had learned, in 18 months, to exhale on his cue. Ryan was mid-presentation, quarterly numbers, forward projections, a phrase about operational efficiency repeated at intervals. He stopped. Not because of the numbers, because of the reflection. The glass table was picking up Darius's moving shape and throwing it as a dark smear across the projection screen. A watermark drifting through the revenue columns, like something that hadn't been accounted for in the deck. Ryan noticed it the way a man notices something on his sleeve mid-sentence. A brief pause, a flicker of irritation he didn't fully suppress. He didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. "Hey." The word carried the redirecting quality of something aimed at an animal in the wrong room. This room is for decision makers, not support staff. 2 fingers gestured toward the door, small, dismissive, the motion reserved for things that don't warrant full attention. "You can finish up out there." A few people at the table smiled. Not broadly, just the corners of their mouths. A social reflex echoed without thought. 2 board members glanced at their phones. One woman near the middle looked at Darius for the first time, then looked away. The room waited for the moment to pass. Darius stopped moving. He straightened slowly, cloth still in his hand, and looked at the middle distance. The nowhere a man looks when he is deciding something he has already decided. His right hand moved to the breast pocket of his uniform, pressed briefly against something there, then came back to his side. "Before this meeting ends," he said, his voice low and even, "someone in here won't have a job." The silence lasted half a second. Then Ryan Fletcher smiled, the smooth, boardroom-calibrated smile of a man who finds disruptions mildly interesting. A couple of people laughed. One of the general counsels shook his head. An executive down the table whispered something, and the woman beside him pressed her lips together to keep from smiling. The cleaner had talked back. In a room full of people who held titles and equity and calendars blocked through Q4, a man in a numbered navy clip had implied a threat. Nobody thought he meant it. Nobody thought they needed to ask. Darius picked up his caddy, tucked the cloth over the side rail, and walked toward the door at the same unhurried pace he had walked in. He did not slam it. He pulled it shut behind him with a soft, clean click. The laughter faded. Ryan advanced to the next slide. The boardroom door had barely closed before it opened again. The executive assistant on duty had seen the spill from the corridor. Red wine, the glass Ryan had been holding during his presentation, knocked sideways when he reached for his notes without looking. It had sheeted across the left quarter of the table fast, running toward the edge, darkening the papers beneath it before anyone could react. She held the door. She looked toward the service alcove. Darius picked up his caddy and came back in. Nobody acknowledged his return. The meeting had resumed around the spill, the way meetings resume around any interruption. Immediate, practiced, the disruption processed and discarded. Ryan was back at the slide. Board members had retrieved what papers they could and resettled. The only evidence that anything had happened was the deep red stain spreading at the near end of the table, and the faint smell of wine cutting through the recycled air of the 42nd floor. Ryan clicked to the next slide. Workforce Optimization, Q2 to Q3 Transition Plan. The tone of the room shifted with it. The scattered attention of a routine board meeting resolving into something more focused, more careful. Ryan spoke for 4 minutes. Darius worked along the edge of the table, blotting the wine, squaring the displaced materials, moving with the efficient silence that had become reflex after 7 months of learning to exist in rooms without being registered. He tracked body language as he worked, who leaned in, who went still, who exchanged glances with their neighbors. What Ryan was presenting was, in its corporate architecture, unremarkable. A workforce reduction framed as strategic realignment. The number he cited, 120 positions, was delivered in the same measured cadence as the quarterly figures, as if scale were a technicality rather than a count of people. The projected savings were on the slide. The reallocation was there too, in smaller font in the lower right corner. Executive Performance Compensation, Q3. Nobody at the table pointed at that line. Nobody asked what the ratio was between what was being taken from the bottom and what was being added to the top. When the table surface was clear, Darius moved to the carpet near the base. The wine had reached the edge and run over. He crouched down, back to the room, cloth working into the fibers. And there, close to the floor, body angled away, the full room behind him and no one watching, he reached into the caddy, not for supplies. The phone was old, scratched at the corners from years of use. The founder's personal device, purchased before Sterling Dynamics existed, back when the company was still called Langston Freight Solutions and ran on 14 employees and 2 trucks. It had never been entered into Sterling's IT system. It carried access architecture that predated the current system because it had built the foundation the current system ran on. He powered it on, kept it below the table edge, and navigated to the fleet operations dashboard. He had been monitoring a recurring error in the Southeast routing algorithm for 6 weeks, a rounding discrepancy in mileage calculation cascading into consistent fuel inefficiency across the Savannah and Charlotte roads. Nobody on the operations team had flagged it. It disappeared into the quarterly numbers as normal variance unless you were looking at per-mile fuel spend by corridor. He found the error. He corrected it. 4 keystrokes. Saved and closed. 45 seconds. He put the phone away and went back to the carpet. Ryan was still talking. The room had noticed nothing. Near the glass wall, a figure stopped. Maya Okafor had been on her way from the HR suite to a meeting on 43 when she passed the boardroom corridor. She had a folder under one arm, running 4 minutes late. She would have continued past. But she paused. A man crouched near the base of the conference table, working on the carpet. Contracted cleaning staff. She had passed dozens of them in this corridor. She had never stopped for any of them. She stopped now because of his left wrist. He had shifted position slightly, and the sleeve of his uniform had pulled back just enough to expose the watch. It was not a cleaning staff watch. It was a slim dress watch, older in style, with a worn leather strap and a gold case that caught the corridor light, with the quiet authority of something well-made and long-kept. She leaned slightly, and at that angle, along the inner edge of the case, in small engraved script, a name, not a brand. A name. The same name engraved on the plaque beside the photograph in the company's history gallery on the lobby level. The founder's name. The man who had built Sterling Dynamics from a warehouse and 2 trucks and 14 employees before it had a name anyone recognized. A watch like that was not something a cleaning technician owned. It was not something you bought. It was something given or kept. Maya stood very still. The man near the floor tucked something into the caddy tray below the supply shelf, smoothed his cloth over the carpet, and continued working, unbothered, invisible to everyone in the room behind him. Her folder shifted under her arm. She looked at the watch again, then at Ryan's slide, and the 120 number still on the screen, then back at the man on the floor. She was 4 minutes late to her meeting. She would be considerably later. She leaned against the column and watched through the glass, her expression moving through confusion and arriving somewhere that had no clean name yet. She went to her meeting, but she took the long corridor back. That evening, from her personal email account, she sent a message to a numbered internal contact she had received anonymously 3 weeks before. No subject line. 1 PDF attachment. 11 pages of documentation she had been building for 14 months and had not known, until today, who to trust with it. The rumor moved through the building the way rumors always move, not from the top down, but sideways, along the unofficial channels below the level of formal communication. Through the break room on the 23rd floor, where the custodial team ate in overlapping 15-minute windows, through the receiving dock at the east entrance, through the parking structure, through text messages, through stairwell conversations between people who didn't trust the elevators. By 10 a.m. on Wednesday, everyone below the 3rd floor knew Ryan Fletcher had a list. Nobody had seen the document, but the shape of it had passed through enough hands to acquire the texture of certainty. 120 positions, all in operational support, facilities, and non-core logistics. Primarily hourly workers, contracted staff, and lower-tier salaried employees. The rationale filtered through a mid-level manager who had overheard the wrong conversation. Streamlining for Q3 efficiency targets. Savings reallocated to executive performance compensation. Darius was restocking paper towels in the dispenser beside the break room sink on 23 when the conversation 3 feet to his left began. Carla Reyes had been at Sterling for 6 years. She ran the overnight cleaning rotation on floors 12 through 21, knew every storage closet, kept her equipment in better condition than most of the company's fleet vehicles, and had, 3 weeks ago, signed a 12-month lease on a 2-bedroom apartment in Decatur. The math had just barely worked. Current hours, the small January raise. She wasn't crying exactly. She was doing the thing people do just before crying. Rapid, shallow breathing, both hands pressing flat against the counter to find something solid. 12 months, she said, to no one. I signed 12 months. Marcus Webb was sitting at the table behind her. his lunch untouched. 11 years at Sterling, dock supervisor. The kind of man who tracked things nobody asked him to track. Inventory discrepancies noted in a small notebook he kept in his inside jacket pocket. Inefficiencies flagged in emails that sometimes got responses and sometimes didn't. He had been the one, on Darius's third week in the building, to point him toward the service elevator shortcut on the east side when the main freight lift was down. Had shown him where the extra supply caddies were kept, walked him through the building's maintenance schedule without being asked. A small kindness, unremarked upon. Darius had not forgotten it. "They're not posting anything until Friday," Marcus said. The way he said it conveyed no reassurance, because Marcus Webb was not a man who offered reassurance he didn't believe. "Friday is 2 days away, Marcus." "I know." James Osei, inventory control in the second sub-basement, 26 years old, 2 years at Sterling, spoke quietly from the corner. "The math doesn't work. Cut 120 from support and facilities, and you're not saving overhead. You're cutting operational capacity. Something breaks in the logistics chain within 90 days. Nobody responded. It was probably accurate. It didn't change the number on Carla's lease or the cost of her mother's insulin when the insurance was cut. The door opened. Ryan Fletcher did not normally come to the 23rd floor break room. His office was on 38. He had a separate kitchen up there, an espresso machine, a pantry stocked by a service he had approved as an executive benefit. He was here now mid-conversation with one of his directors, treating the room as a passage between two other places. His eyes moved across the space and filed it without dwelling. Then they stopped. "Marcus," he said. Marcus looked up. Ryan said the name the way you identify something you've cataloged. Not warmly, not coldly, precisely. "You're on the restructuring list." He said it in the tone of a man correcting a calendar entry. Flat, administrative, nothing personal in it. "We are reducing low-value staff first. 11 years is a long time, and you deserve clarity rather than waiting for the formal communication." A beat. "Your skills in manual freight operations are solid. Manual, freight, operations. 11 years of institutional knowledge and operational precision reduced to the physical category of what Marcus's body had done. But we're moving toward an automated intake model that requires a different profile." He said it in front of Carla, in front of James, in front of everyone eating in that room. He said it with the flat, reasonable tone of a weather forecast. Accurate, inevitable, nobody's fault. And then he walked out, still mid-conversation with his director, the room behind him already receding from his attention before the door had finished closing. Nobody spoke for a moment. Darius had not moved from the paper towel dispenser. His back was mostly turned, cloth in hand. But in the mirror above the sink, he had watched the full sequence, Ryan's entrance, his delivery, his exit. And something inside him stopped tracking and started deciding. He had been documenting a pattern for 7 months. Standing in that break room, the pattern had a face on it. Not one face, every face in the room. Marcus was still at the table. He had not touched his lunch. Darius finished with the dispenser, picked up his caddy, and walked toward the door. As he passed Marcus's table, he set down a folded napkin near the edge. Nothing announced, nothing demonstrated. On the napkin, in small, even handwriting, "You matter in this room." That hasn't changed. He was out the door before Marcus could look up. In the hallway, his phone buzzed once. Maya Okafor, HR, 3rd floor, no text, 1 PDF attachment. He opened it in the service elevator. 11 pages. Ryan's name in the header. dated 6 weeks ago. 2 phases of workforce reduction. Phase 1. The current list of 120. Phase 2. An additional 60 to 80 positions, contingent on Phase 1 proceeding without significant internal resistance. The projected impact on Q3 executive compensation was in the appendix, itemized with the precision of something someone had been proud of when they wrote it. Darius read it twice. He stood alone in the stopped elevator between floors, the motor humming around him. Then he forwarded the document to a secure server with no association with Sterling Dynamics' corporate infrastructure. He sat in his car in the parking structure for 6 minutes. Then he made a call. "We're moving it up," he said. "Secure the documentation. Have counsel ready by end of week." He ended the call. Then he went back inside and finished his shift. The access flag appeared on Ryan Fletcher's security dashboard at 7:42 Thursday morning. A minor alert, the kind the system generated when a user account attempted a restricted file directory from an unregistered device. Ryan would not have seen it at all if he hadn't been standing at the security monitor in the IT supervisor's office at the exact moment it populated. He read it twice. The restricted directory was the internal executive compensation registry. Bonus structures, performance metrics, fiscal modeling. Board-level access only. The unregistered device showed old hardware, a protocol years out of current standard. The building's Wi-Fi triangulation placed it on floors 41 and 42, and once in the break room on 23. Ryan looked at the log. He was quiet for a moment. He said, "cleaning staff," in a tone that made it a category rather than a person. He said he wanted security to locate the contracted cleaning employee who had been in the boardroom on Tuesday and bring him to the 38th floor. It took 22 minutes. The 38th floor corridor was glass-walled. Everyone in the open-plan offices could see the hallway, which meant that when security walked Darius out of the elevator and down the full length of the corridor toward the executive suite, a significant portion of the floor watched it happen. Darius walked between the two officers with the same unhurried, upright posture he carried everywhere. He set his caddy down outside Ryan's suite carefully, the way you set down something you're responsible for. Ryan came out to meet him in the corridor. Not in the office, in the corridor, where the glass walls made everything visible and nothing private. "Someone has been accessing restricted files using an old piece of hardware," Ryan said, measured and reasonable. "The access originated inside this building, from areas corresponding to your work zones." A pause, calibrated for effect. "I'm not here to make accusations. I want to give you a chance to explain." Darius looked at him. "I don't have anything to explain." The device accessed board-level file directories. Location signature places those events in the boardroom corridor and the 23rd floor. Ryan tilted his head slightly and lowered his voice. "Just enough to lose carrying power in the open corridor. Enough to make it a private register in a public space, which is its own kind of pressure. I want to be direct with you. Men from backgrounds like yours often confuse standing near power with belonging to it." The two security officers stood very still. Through the glass walls on both sides, people at their desks had stopped pretending to look at their screens. Darius said nothing. Ryan held his gaze, then straightened. "Security will walk you out. We'll contact your contracting firm about next steps." He turned. His elbow caught the small framed photograph sitting on top of Darius's caddy, the place Darius always kept it, visible, so he could see it when the day got hard. The photo fell and hit the floor face up. Imani, 15 years old, laughing at something off camera, her whole face open with it. Ryan looked down at it. His mouth tightened briefly. Then he said, quietly, but not quietly enough, "I hope your daughter gets better options in life, and a better example to look at." He walked away. The corridor was very quiet. One of the security officers bent down, picked up the photograph, and held it out to Darius without looking at him. Darius took it. He looked at his daughter's face, open, unguarded, laughing at something she had found genuinely funny. He placed the photo back in his breast pocket, carefully, the way you return something to the place it belongs. When he looked up, his face was quiet in a way it hadn't been before. He picked up the caddy. He rode the elevator to the ground floor, checked out at the contractor's station, and walked to his car. He called his attorney, then Maya Okafor, then the board's independent counsel, the attorney retained directly by the shareholders, not the executive team, and spoke for 7 minutes in a calm, level voice about what would need to happen and when. When he finished, he sat in the parking structure's concrete quiet. He put his hand into his breast pocket and felt the edge of the photo. He did not take it out. Then he started the car. Ryan Fletcher believed by Thursday afternoon that he had handled the situation. The contracting firm had been notified. The employee, listed only as a number, which satisfied Ryan in a way he didn't examine, was no longer cleared for building access. Legal had been briefed. A formal incident report was in process. He returned to his office at 6 to review the board presentation deck. The presentation was scheduled for Tuesday. The restructuring announcement would accompany it. 120 positions. Phase 2 contingent on Phase 1 proceeding cleanly. The executive compensation appendix was, he believed, entirely defensible. He had operated in the gray areas with precision because he understood exactly what institutions needed to act and what they could not touch. He was at his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled, when he heard footsteps in the corridor. Not security, not administrative staff. Slower, more deliberate. Through the glass wall of his office suite, a figure in a navy uniform was moving down the corridor. The cleaning caddy rolling quietly alongside. Posture straight. Pace unhurried. The same gait from Tuesday, the same gait from Thursday. Ryan came out of his office. "You're not supposed to be in this building." Darius kept walking. "I said..." Darius stopped, turned. In his left hand was the caddy. In his right hand was the founder's old phone, scratched at the edges, the screen lit, held slightly angled outward. Ryan's eyes went to the screen. He recognized the document structure immediately. The column layout, the header format, the specific grid of the executive compensation modeling system. He recognized it the way you recognize your own handwriting across a room. He couldn't read the figures. He didn't need to. The shape told him enough. His mouth opened. For a long moment, nothing came out. "That file is classified at board level. There is no way you have access to..." He looked at the phone. At Darius's face. Back at the phone. His voice stripped of its usual calibration. "Who are you?" Darius looked at him with the same steadiness he had carried for 7 months through every hallway and supply closet in this building. "You never asked," he said. "I'm asking now." "I know." Darius lowered the phone slightly. 7 months. I've been in your meetings. In your office. I emptied your trash, Ryan. You looked at me dozens of times. You never once thought to ask. Ryan's jaw tightened. "That is not an answer." "No," Darius said. "It's an observation. I'm calling security. They won't come for this. Not a threat. A simple, even statement from a man who knows exactly where he stands. "The people you put on that list," Darius said. "The ones you walked past without registering. The ones you called low value and announced publicly in break rooms in front of their colleagues. You assumed invisibility worked in one direction. A beat. It doesn't." Ryan stared at him. The rapid recalibration was visible on his face. The processing, the reaching for alternatives, the not finding them. "What do you want?" he said more quietly. At that moment, the founder's old phone buzzed once in Darius's hand. He glanced at the screen. A new message from Maya Okafor. Another attachment. The final batch of documentation she had been holding back. Internal emails showing Ryan's coordination with 2 board members to suppress the HR audit results. Dated 4 weeks before the restructuring announcement. The last piece. The full picture. Darius looked back up at Ryan. He reached into the lining pocket of his uniform and removed a folded document. He set it on the corridor credenza between them. "I don't want anything from you," he said. "The people in this building do. They want their jobs and their insurance and to know that the person running this company can actually see them." He picked up his caddy. "There's a board meeting Monday morning," he said. "Be there." He walked back toward the elevator, the caddy rolling quietly behind him. Ryan stood in the corridor and watched him go, and did not call security, and did not pick up the document right away, and stood there for a long time in the empty hallway while the city came on outside the glass, floor by floor. When he finally picked up the document, his hands were cold. The emergency shareholder meeting was scheduled for Monday morning at 9. Ryan received the formal notification Friday at 5. The notice was procedurally impeccable, correctly filed, correctly served, invoking Article 9 of Sterling Dynamics' original operating agreement, which allowed the majority shareholder to convene an emergency session with 72 hours' notice. The majority shareholder, listed in the corporate registry under a holding entity called Langston Capital Holdings, had been, in Ryan's 18 months at Sterling Dynamics, entirely silent. He had assumed that meant passive. That assumption had seemed reasonable right up until Friday at 5. He called his attorney. He called 2 board allies. He spent the weekend constructing a defensive narrative, framing around the restructuring plan, the compensation structure, the legality of every decision taken. His attorney thought the position was defensible. Ryan agreed. He had done nothing cleanly documentable as misconduct. The patterns were real but diffuse. He had operated in the gray areas with precision because he understood what institutions required to act. He arrived Monday at 8:45 in a fresh charcoal suit. He had his tablet. He had his CFO. He had a plan. The boardroom on 42 looked the same as it had the previous Tuesday, except the chair at the head of the table was occupied by Diane Wu, the company's independent legal counsel. 28 years practicing corporate law in Atlanta. And standing against the wall, quietly in a row, with the posture of people who have made a deliberate choice to be somewhere, were 6 people in Navy uniforms. The overnight cleaning supervisor, the warehouse coordinator from the dock, 2 members of the 23rd floor custodial team, the woman from the break room who had been pressing her hands against the counter to stay upright. Ryan stopped just inside the door. "What are they?" "Please take a seat, Ryan," Diane said, without looking up. He sat. At 9 exactly, the door at the far end of the boardroom opened. Darius Langston walked in. He was wearing the uniform. Not fresh, the same one from his last shift, the navy fabric marked at the knee where he had crouched on the carpet. A faint wine stain on the left cuff from Tuesday's spill. The laminated number clip. The worn fabric at the collar. 7 months of work pressed into every fiber. He walked the length of the room without hurrying, reached the head of the table, pulled out the chair, and sat down. The room did not move. "For the record," Diane Wu said, "this emergency session has been convened under Article 9 of Sterling Dynamics Operating Agreement by Darius Langston, majority shareholder and controlling interest holder of Langston Capital Holdings, which represents 58% of Sterling Dynamics' outstanding shares. Mr. Langston will chair this session." Nobody moved. Ryan Fletcher's face went through several things in rapid succession. Disbelief, recalculation, a brief desperate reach for an alternative reading, and then something that wasn't recognition exactly. But the first real version of it, arriving too late and landing hard. Darius opened the folder in front of him. 3 documents on the table. No preamble. "I'm going to walk through this briefly," he said, "because everyone in this room deserves a clear account of what has been happening here." He went through it methodically. First, the restructuring memo, Ryan's signature, Ryan's language, linking the 120-person layoff directly to executive bonus thresholds, with a projected Phase 2 of 60 to 80 additional cuts. Second, the executive compensation modeling, showing the precise financial benefit to the 6-person executive team if the reductions proceeded. Third, Maya Okafor's 14-month HR pattern analysis, promotion rates, performance improvement plan placements, demographic breakdowns of reassignments and exits, with the statistical regularity that required no editorial commentary. And the final batch of documents Maya had sent Thursday evening, internal emails showing Ryan's coordination to suppress the audit results before the board ever saw them. Then the behavioral documentation, specific dates, specific language, the warehouse supervisor's reassignment, the accounts coordinator's 2 passed-over promotions, the logistics analyst's performance plan filed 6 weeks after he raised a concern in an all-hands. The break room, Marcus Webb's name said publicly, in front of colleagues, as an announcement rather than a private meeting, because the audience had been intended. The boardroom on Tuesday, the corridor on Thursday. He read those entries without inflection. Ryan tried to speak twice. The first time, Darius continued without acknowledging him. The second time, Diane said, "Please hold your response until Mr. Langston has concluded." When Darius finished, he closed the folder. For the first time, he looked directly at Ryan, not with the performed invisibility of 7 months, not with anger, but with the full, settled weight of a man who has decided exactly what needs to be said and intends to say only that. "You're not losing this job because you insulted me," Darius said. "You didn't know who I was. What you did would have been wrong regardless of who I was." Ryan's jaw worked. "I was executing the strategy I was hired to implement." 120 people, Darius said. Ryan stopped. 120 people who drove here every morning, did their jobs, and planned their lives around what this company told them it would provide. You were going to cut them to fund bonuses for 6 executives and call it operational efficiency. He paused. "I've read the emails. I know the language you plan to use." Nobody at the table spoke. "You don't lose this job because of what you said to me," Darius said, quieter now. "You lose it because you believed the people you said it in front of didn't matter." Ryan looked around the table. The board members looked back with expressions that had moved past neutral into something more definitive. He looked at the row of uniformed employees against the wall. He looked at Maya Okafor at the far end, who met his gaze and did not drop it. He looked back at Darius, and something in him that had been performing confidence for 2 days finally gave out. "I can fix this," he said, his voice reduced to almost nothing. "The numbers, the results, give me a chance to—" "The vote," Darius said, "is already scheduled." He looked at Diane Wu. "Article 9, Section 4, she said. "Removal of executive officers upon majority shareholder motion. The vote will proceed." 4 minutes. The tally was not close. When Diane confirmed the result, Ryan sat at the table a moment longer than was comfortable, looking at the glass surface. Then he stood, straightened his jacket, and walked the length of the boardroom. He did not speak. He passed the row of uniformed employees. He passed the board members, who offered him nothing. He reached the door and went through it. It closed behind him. Darius sat at the head of the table in his stained cleaning uniform and let the silence hold for one full moment. Then he said, "Let's talk about what comes next." The first call Darius made from the boardroom was to the contracting firm that managed the cleaning crew. He authorized immediate direct employment conversion for every contracted cleaning staff member who wanted it. Company benefits, company pay rates, no more placement fees. The call took 8 minutes. He made it before any other business. The restructuring plan was formally suspended by end of day. Every employee on the 120-person list received a written notification by 5 p.m. Not an automated message, but a letter on company letterhead signed by Darius that said plainly, "Your position is secure, your benefits are intact, and the company was sorry this uncertainty had been placed in front of you." The HR team spent the afternoon fielding calls from employees who needed a human voice to confirm it. Carla Reyes got the call at 3:15. She was standing in the parking structure outside her building because she hadn't been able to bring herself to go up to the apartment since Saturday. She listened, asked the coordinator to repeat it once, then sat down on a concrete barrier and pressed the phone against her chest and breathed. Marcus Webb read the letter at his desk on the dock. He read it twice, then folded it along its original crease and put it in his inside jacket pocket. The same one where he kept the small notebook nobody had asked him to keep. He went back to work. The week that followed was not clean. Real institutional repair never is. Darius appointed an interim leadership committee, 3 board members, independent counsel, and Maya Okafor, elevated to acting chief people officer with a formal mandate to conduct a full audit of HR practices, promotion patterns, compensation equity, and behavioral documentation across the previous 14 months. 60 days. Findings public to all employees. The compensation structure was rebuilt from scratch. Executive bonuses were decoupled from headcount reduction metrics. A workforce development fund was established from the redirected executive compensation pool. Paid training, certification reimbursement, and internal mobility support for hourly and contracted workers who wanted pathways into different roles. And wages for all facilities and operational support staff were raised across the board, effective immediately, not reclassified, not restructured into new titles. Raised. Maya had not planned on being in that room on Monday. She had forwarded documents through personal channels for months, at genuine professional risk, with no certainty that anything would come of it. In the hallway after the meeting, Darius said, "You documented all of it. You sent it even when you didn't know who was receiving it. That took courage." She said, "I was scared the whole time." "I know," he said. "That's what makes it courage." The audit produced what Maya had documented, and more. The promotion gap between white employees and employees of color at senior associate level and above was 34 percentage points over 14 months. The performance improvement plan rate for Black and Latino employees was 3 times the company average. The exit interview data, classified as HR internal under Ryan and excluded from board reporting, showed a consistent pattern. 41 people had left in the previous year and a half, citing management culture and feelings of exclusion. Darius reviewed each exit interview himself. The restructuring proposal was replaced with a new operational model achieving efficiency targets through technology integration and process redesign. It added 38 new positions in logistics technology and promoted 17 existing employees, including the Savannah warehouse supervisor, who was offered a regional director position and accepted it with the grace of a man who had decided not to make the company feel the weight of what it owed him. James Osei, the inventory analyst from the sub-basement, who had predicted the logistics breakdown at his break room table, was brought before the board to present his operational analysis. 26 years old, never in the boardroom before. He spent the first 45 seconds visibly recalibrating to the room. Then he presented for 22 minutes without notes. The board authorized a full logistics review based on his recommendations. Maya stayed late most nights during those 6 weeks. Once Darius knocked on her open office door at 7:30, and she looked up from a spreadsheet and said, "I keep finding more." Not with despair, with the focused energy of someone finally given the right tools. "Was it what you expected?" she asked. "Before you started working down here?" He thought about Carla at the sink, pressing both hands flat against the counter. Marcus with his untouched lunch. 11 years folded in a jacket pocket. "It was worse," he said, "and the people were better." He went back to his office. He had 6 more hours of work ahead of him. The town hall was held on a Thursday morning in May. The subject line of the announcement read, "No one is invisible." The second-floor atrium was the only space large enough for everyone. Every seat filled, people standing along the walls. Video feeds to Savannah, Charlotte, and Nashville live. The cleaning crew was there, the dock workers, the 23rd floor team in the 3rd row, Carla Reyes among them, hands folded in her lap. At 8 o'clock, Darius was not at the front of the atrium. He was in the elevator going up. He rode it to 42. The boardroom was empty, reset to its ordinary configuration. Polished table, leather chairs, the north-facing windows letting in flat morning light. He stood in the doorway for a moment. The room looked exactly as it had on the morning he walked in with his caddy and his uniform and his daughter's photograph in his breast pocket. He walked to the supply closet at the end of the corridor and took a clean microfiber cloth from the shelf. He walked back to the boardroom. He stood at the far end of the glass table, the same end where Ryan had gestured him toward the door with 2 fingers 7 weeks ago, and pressed the cloth to the surface and began to wipe it down. Slow, careful circles, the way it was supposed to be done. He worked the full length of the table without rushing. In the table's surface, his reflection moved with him, steady, unhurried, present. When he reached the head of the table, he stopped. He folded the cloth and set it on the supply tray. Then the door opened behind him. Diane Wu was in the doorway. Behind her, 3 board members, then 2 more. The general counsels, the CFO, the interim committee. They came in and arranged themselves along the sides of the room, and one by one, without speaking, without ceremony. They stood up straight and looked at him. Not the way the room had looked at him when he was invisible. He held that for a moment. Then he gave a small nod. They filed back out toward the elevator and the town hall below. Darius was the last one out. He turned off the light and pulled the door closed behind him. Downstairs, The atrium was full of the noise a room makes when the weight pressing on it finally lifts. He came through the side entrance and made his way to the platform. People straightened in their seats, the noise pulling inward. 400 people deciding at once to pay attention. He talked for 18 minutes. He told the truth, not a reframed version, not a strategic narrative, but the actual sequence. Why he had come back in a uniform, what he had seen, what he had understood from it. He said, "You were treated as though your value was limited to your job title. It isn't. It never was. And this company failed to protect that. And I failed to see it happening until I was standing in the middle of it." He said it plainly. When he finished, he said one more thing. This company is called Sterling Dynamics. What makes something sterling isn't that it's perfect. It's that it holds its quality under pressure. He paused. That's what I saw in this building for 7 months. In the people who showed up every day, did their work, held their dignity, and waited for someone to finally pay attention. The atrium came up, not all at once, but in the way genuine things build, from somewhere in the middle, spreading outward until it filled the room and the video feeds and the high glass ceiling, where the May light came through in long, slanted lines. Darius stepped back from the platform. In the third row, Carla Reyes was watching the aisle, where one of Maya's HR coordinators was moving quietly between seats, delivering small white envelopes to 4 members of the cleaning team. Plain envelopes. No branding. The coordinator stopped beside Carla and held one out. Carla looked up. The coordinator gave a small nod and moved on. Carla opened it. A letter on Langston Capital Holdings letterhead. The second paragraph contained a number, a scholarship amount, full academic year, renewable, attached to her daughter's name. The foundation had been established 6 months ago, before the uniform, before the Monday meeting, before any of it had become public. The program had been designed while Darius was still emptying trash cans in the executive suite at 6 in the morning. Carla pressed the letter against her chest with both hands. Her daughter, 16, sitting one chair to her right, who had taken the morning off school to be there, leaned over and read it. Then she put her arms around her mother and held on. At the back of the atrium, Darius stood near the service door and watched, not drawing attention to the moment, just watching the room do what it does when it is finally allowed to breathe. Across the space, Marcus Webb was standing with 2 dock workers by the west entrance. When their eyes met, Marcus gave a single nod, the kind that doesn't need a sentence. Darius nodded back. In the row just behind Carla, James Osei had a notebook open on his knee, already writing. He would probably be in a different seat this time next year. Good. Maya caught Darius's eye from across the atrium and gave a small, real smile, not performed, not polished, just honest. He returned it. Outside, Peachtree Street was its ordinary Thursday morning self. Traffic, people, the city indifferent and continuous, neither knowing nor marking what was being rebuilt 12 floors above. The world does not pause for the moment a company decides to be a different kind of place. But the people in the room know. The people who showed up every morning, who mopped the floors and moved the freight and tracked the inventory and notebooks nobody asked them to keep. They know what it costs to be treated as less than you are. And they know exactly what it feels like when that changes. It feels like your name being said out loud by someone who means it. It feels like a letter in a plain white envelope that says your child has a future this company is going to help support. It feels like a room full of people standing up without being asked. Darius stepped through the service door, back into the corridor. He set the microfiber cloth back on the cleaning cart in its proper place. aligned with the others. He stood there alone for a moment in the quiet hallway, the noise of the atrium coming through the door behind him in warm, muffled waves. He thought about Imani, cross-legged in a hospital chair, her mother's directness in her eyes. He thought about this morning's breakfast, and her looking up before she left and saying, without needing an answer, "They're going to be okay now, aren't they, Dad?" He had said yes. He had meant it. He straightened, left the cloth on the cart where it belonged, and walked back toward the atrium and the people inside it, toward the company he had built and the work, still ongoing, of making it worthy of them.